What we have here is a mid to late 1920s Victor Jr. I had a video on this fan a long time ago, and I basically abandoned the fan thinking it would never run again because it was in such bad shape. It had been obviously sitting probably in a garage or a barn for many years, and it is in horrible condition. It's almost saddening to see it this way. The bearings were frozen solid when I got it. Now, when I last touched this fan, the motor shaft was still frozen solid. But I went to move it just recently. Now, that was a couple years ago. And at the time, I had soaked the bearings on both sides with penetrating oil. That thing is nasty. So I did that, and in the hopes of eventually freeing it up. And then I forgot about it. Put it up on that shelf, put it on top of the cabinet right there, where it's been ever since. Now, I went to go move the fan a couple weeks ago, and in doing so, I discovered that the motor shaft wasn't frozen solid anymore. It had freed itself up a little bit from just sitting with the penetrating oil, and I think I'm going to try to salvage it. Worth a shot. It's going to be tricky, but we're going to try it. We're going to try to get it freed up. I don't know if the motor windings are any good, but I mean, it's all there, so it's worth a shot. I'm going to get some WD-40 and I'm going to soak the motor shaft in the front again. Let's get this. I mean, it's not totally frozen anymore, so if we get the fan apart, there's a possibility that it could be salvaged. You never know. It doesn't take a rocket surgeon to figure out just how bad this fan's life has been. This thing is in rough shape. The shaft is not frozen, but might as well be. The front bearing, I believe, is what the real problem is, and we're going to try to get... My goal right now isn't to restore this fan, just get it running. Once I have it running and I know what kind of condition the bearings are in, then I'll figure out what to do with it. But as of right now, it is not looking pretty at all. We're going to check the motor for resistance, make sure it's not dead shorted before we hook up any power. I have a ring circuit tester from Anatech, but I don't think it's going to be necessary at this point. So all I got to do now is we have to take the motor off the base, undo what little wiring is left. You know what's interesting is, and it's kind of a shame that the oscillator gears are all there and they're in pretty good shape. It's all the more reason why I hope this motor is salvageable. And Victor Juniors are pretty rare. And Victor wasn't the most popular fan company, but it was one of the original fan makers. Right now I'm unscrewing the base. You're not really missing much right now, and you're just going to hear me talk, which some people love to do. But once I get the motor freed up and I can confirm that it's a running unit, then I'll put some effort into doing a full restoration. As of right now, it looks like a bunch of black paint. That's all it really needs. But we want to stop the disintegration. Sorry about that. We want to stop the disintegration process. That's what our goal is right now. Yeah. Even the base was rusted on. This thing has not seen happy times, let me tell you. No. But happy times are on their way. But check out this wiring here. So it looks like it may have originally had a rubber plug. In fact, I'm 90% sure of it. Yeah, look at that. That's an original rubber plug. I mean, look at these connections. They're done with cloth and what looks like the old-fashioned resin. Phenolic resin, they call that. I mean, this is if this was a replacement cord, it was done really well. Let's put it that way. But let's try to undo this. So we're just going to cut the wiring. I'm going to reuse that head wire too. That's in good shape. That's in really good shape. It's a single speed switch, on off. Original phenolic resin connectors. Look at that. That's pretty rare. Find all that, you know. All right. Let's get those wires cut so I can pull the cord out so I can get the motor off the base. Gonna cut right that. Yeah, I could be using wire cutters, but there's no fun there. Let's cut all that out. Somebody cut the original cord off. That's probably a good thing because it might have been me actually. I think I may have done that. But the cord was not safe. If the cord isn't safe, it gets cut off. Period. End of story. No discussion needed. So, but I like to reuse the original head wiring if I can when doing a restoration like this. For the simple fact that you can't replicate it. If it's in good shape, leave it the hell alone. That's kind of my motto when it comes to old wiring. It'll be fine. You know what I mean? Look at all this rust that came out. My hands are disgusting. Look, ew. Gross. But unfortunately, the hard rubber plug is being a bastard. So let's do this. Let's take the motor hinge off. All these bolts and screws and pieces of hardware, they're going to come off and they're going to get cleaned up on a wire wheel before they get put back on. I really like this fan because it's a well-made example of, I'm going to say it's late 20s appliance. I can even reuse that rubber plug because it slides right out. Look at that. It looks like it'll slide off. Okay, for those of you who are easily horrified, look away now. For those of you who want to see what a worst case scenario looks like, well, there are worst case scenarios. There are cases that are worse than this one, and they're lying on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean along with the passenger liner that went down with them. Alright, here goes nothing. Yeah, it's bad. Look at the armature. It is horrifying. Rust everywhere. Ew. Well, I didn't expect any different, let's put it that way. The motor housing, yeah, not much prettier. Look at that stator. Holy shit. That's a lot of rust. The windings aren't burned. The black you see is the phenolic resin and paint that were used during the assembly of the motor. So I think we might be good there. Actually, the windings don't look to be in bad shape at all. In fact, I'm going to take a multimeter and just check them for resistance to see if they're shorted. I'm not going to bother with the ring tester because it's given me mixed results in the past. In fact, I almost scrapped my precious little Vortelex as a result of those readings. Turned out the fan was fine. It just the the instrument was too sensitive, or not sensitive enough, I don't know which. So I've got a brand new Radio Shack multimeter that I'm going to test out here. This is a pocket multimeter. You won't be able to buy these anymore because Radio Shack is all done. But nevertheless, I bought one before the store closed. My last pocket multimeter from Radio Shack lasted me and continues to last. You know what, I don't want to get this one all dirty. Let's use my old one. This is the one that I got in 1994. My dad bought it for me for Christmas. My very first multimeter. The sucker still works. But this is the newer version of that. It's about the same size. Same features, basically. So if I could just get the damn thing open. There we go. But that's what the new version looks like. Well, let's use the old one for old time's sake, shall we? I don't want to get that one all dirty. We're going to check it for resistance. Okay. What do we get here? We want to make sure that it's not open and it's not shorted. Come on. 25, 29 ohms. I think that's okay. I really do. I think that's okay. 29 ohms. I'm getting 33 ohms. But, yeah, whatever. Okay, well it's not frozen solid. 29 ohms. I have to think about that and see if it's good or bad, but anyway, the next step is we have to clean up the motor shaft. But yeah, it looks like this is stamped in there. Pretty good too. Yeah, this is nasty. This is nasty. But salvageable. But salvageable. Alright. I'm going to tease you guys by breaking this up into multiple video segments. Sorry. But that's all the work I'm going to do for it tonight. We're going to probably continue on maybe next weekend or something like that. And we'll talk about it a little bit more. But we got the disassembly covered. Next, it's going to be a full restoration, I think. Now that I know the motor's not terribly bad, each and every one of these pieces has to be cleaned thoroughly. Especially this one. And that I'm just going to clean it with some steel wool and WD-40 and blow it out. I'm not going to worry about the rust inside. Not much I can do about it anyway. And we're going to slap a coat of paint on that motor. Yeah. It's not pretty, but it can be saved. Stay tuned for more. Alright, we got all the parts laid out here. For the time being, I'm not going to plan on repainting it, but I'm going to clean it up as much as I can. The aluminum blades will shine once more. Actually, that might even be steel. Yeah, those blades are steel. Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. The armature, that's going to get cleaned up with some WD-40 and sandpaper. Best I can. The shaft is in pretty rough shape. The motor, oh man, this thing needs all the help it can get, and I intend to give it that. What I really like about this fan is the cast iron base. I think it is the most beautiful fan base I've ever seen. Solid cast iron. They don't make them like that anymore, and for good reason. They lasted a long time. The hallmark of a high-quality fan is a couple of different things. Number one, easily replaceable bronze bushing. Furthermore, a bushing that can swivel in its own mount. Further still, a replaceable fiber or felt oil wick. Furthermore, The rear gearbox housing is attached to the motor housing through, with a gasket in between to prevent oil from leaking out of the housing. Really, this is a very well-made product. One of the best I've ever seen. Second only, I'd say, to GE. But yeah, the bushing does pivot pretty easily, which helps get the motor shaft aligned correctly during assembly. It really is a very time-saving feature. So I took the front motor cover off. It turns out the armature, or the stator, is actually independent of both halves. Those little notches that I was all worried about are just stop notches. It just keeps it in line. So, remember that front bearing that was so frozen solid the shaft wouldn't even turn? Well, here it is now. Ooh, hit the camera. Yeah, look at that. Nice and smooth. It'll ride in with wear. Okay, so that's that right there, all nice and shiny and working great. Okay. So that shaft spins nice freely now. I cleaned the motor shaft with 1000 grit sandpaper, and that really helped quite a bit. Alright. Working pretty nice there now. Let's check the rear bearing. I cleaned as much rust off the shaft as I'm willing to right now. Like I said, this has to come back apart again later on for other work. Rear bearing is feeling pretty nice too. Yep. Okay. Alright guys, we're going to make history. I've connected the wiring, temporarily with a temporary plug. Our goal really is to just see how unhealthy this motor is. And see if it's even salvageable. I gotta get these blades straightened out too before the guard comes on. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. We are recording. And okay, good. Works. Okay. Kill it. Blade's off balance, but that's okay. That's to be expected. The motor works. So you just witnessed for the first time in probably decades that this thing has actually worked under its own power. But I'm a bit concerned as to why it is so far off balance. That's not a good thing. Let's see if I can show you what I'm doing here. So what I'm actually doing is I'm using my finger as a reference point. And I want the blades to be equal depth, or equal whatchamajig. Alright, let's fire it up again. Get the cord out of the blade area. There is definitely a balancing issue there. But we should let it run for a little while. I'll let the bearings, kind of set. It's really not that bad. It sounds good though. It's actually kind of encouraging. Remember now, this thing hasn't run. This motor was frozen solid. I mean, solid. It wasn't planning on working anytime soon. When I got this thing, and it's been sitting up on that shelf up there for about 3 years. because I didn't think it was salvageable. And sure enough, it's salvageable. But I want to let it run for a little while. It's been a long time. I want to make sure that that motor doesn't overheat too much. I also want to make sure that it doesn't develop any bearing noise, because that could be pretty difficult to repair once that's been established. So she's still got to go back and be taken completely apart again. I want to repaint the motor a nice semi-gloss black. And the fan, or the shroud itself, is going to get a nice dusting of semi-gloss black, as is the bullet cap in the back. But this motor sounds good. So we're gonna I'm gonna actually have to hold off on any more work on this fan until spring, because as you can clearly see, we are experiencing one hell of a winter right now. Yeah, it looks. I can't even get out of this door. It's that bad. So that's where I would be doing all my paint work. That's not going to happen. This thing's running pretty good. For something that I had written off years ago, it's doing okay. The oscillator is oscillating like it's supposed to. See that thing spinning? It's got a good gearbox. Not that I expected any different. I am amazed at how well this thing runs. No motor noise or bearing noise yet. The motor is still relatively cool. So let's do a coast down and see how it does. I hate that commercial so much. Make it stop. Alright. Not bad. We've successfully salvaged this 90-year-old appliance with very little effort. All I did was take the motor apart, clean it up, clean the bearings, test the motor for shorts, and that was about it. This sucker works really well. So thanks for watching, and in the springtime we'll revisit this old fan and give it a proper restoration. It'll get a nice coat of paint. I can strip the old paint off. I'm going to leave the base alone though. I mean, that still has its original finish and it's still good looking. Well, maybe not. Maybe it could use a little bit of a touch-up. But not much. It doesn't need much. So thanks for watching. And here's a close-up of the head badge. Victor Jr. Don't know how old it is. I'm guessing mid-20s based on how it's constructed. I have nothing to really base that on. It could be mid-30s. But I'm going to call it mid-20s for fun. Thanks again for watching.